This video will cover Chapter 5 materials titled Working with Cases, and if you want to follow along in your textbook, it begins on page 162. So let's open up Metasoft, and we're going to get to a new location. We're going to still be under Lists, Patients, Guarantors, and Cases, but this time we're going to work on the right side of the screen called Cases. Now we need to talk about what a case is. You see the definition on page 163 in the side of the margin that says it's a grouping of transactions that share a common element. That's fancy word speak for why is the patient here today? And whatever they're here for, we're going to group their procedures and everything that goes along with it into something called a case. So if you look at Susan Arlen, who happens to be highlighted, you'll see that her case that she was in for at some point was for bronchitis. A couple of things to know. A patient can have multiple cases. I'll click on Herbert Bell. Notice that he has two. If I go down to Elizabeth Jones, she has three. You can see different things that people come in for: earache, palpitations, diabetes. And if you just kind of shop around, you can see here is Jill Simmons, urinary tract infection annual exam. And we have to learn how to set these up. Now, there are times when you have to create a new case. You might have one case going and you have to create a new case. Here are the most common reasons. If the patient comes in with a new condition, if the patient switches insurance plans, if the patient is covered under workman's compensation, maybe they're coming in today for an injury or a problem that occurred while they were at work, you'd have to create a new case, and it's kind of like a new insurance plan. Because every case is linked to an insurance plan, and if the patient is covered by, let's say, Blue Cross Blue Shield, but they were injured at work, and the company that covers work-related injuries and workman's comp your company has through Aetna, then you'd have to create a new case. If they change physicians, all those times, and that's all listed on page 163 in your book. On page 164 in your book, they give you examples of when to create a new case and when not to. Look at a couple with me here on page 164. The first example is a patient, Josephine of Dr. Yan's, who is covered by Medicare, has some chronic health conditions that include diabetes, arthritis, hypertension, and asthma. She already has 4 cases set up. Now, we don't actually have her in our database, this particular one. But she's in today because she's experiencing low back pain. You need to wait until the doctor provides a diagnosis before you can determine whether you need to create a new case or not. So the last couple of sentences in exercise 1. When the person handling her checkout reviews the encounter form, she sees that the doctor has diagnosed the patient with low back pain due to arthritis. Since she already has a case with arthritis, you don't need to create a new one. Look at the second example. Dr. Jessica Rudner has just finished examining Kimberly. She's a 25-year-old woman who has an existing case for rosacea. Today, though, she is in to receive an anti-malarial prescription in preparation for her travel to India. So because of that, you've got to create a new case. It's different. And then they give you a couple of other ones. Take a look at those and read through them and get to understand what that's about. All right. Now, to use a case, as I talked about in our Chapter 4 discussion, you need to be very careful that you understand these radio buttons. When you select patient, the buttons at the bottom refer to everything about the patient. When you refer to case, the buttons change. Nothing else on the screens change but the button, and that's where you can access the case information. Or if you have an existing case you need to work on, come on to the right side of the screen and double click on it and it will open. Okay, here's what the screen looks like when we talk about cases. You have 11 different tabs that have the potential to be filled in, and we're going to work our way through them fairly quickly. The book discusses them, and I'm going to start with the personal tab, which is the default one that starts. Notice there are 2 rows, and the one that you're working in is the one that has the bold on it. If you want to work on the next one, it turns off the bold on the other one and bolds that one. If you want to work on the second row, it brings the second row to the front and the front to the back, and then you can work that way as well. Okay, so let's start with personal, and it starts with a case number. We don't do anything with the case number. The software automatically assigns it. Yay! And you'll see this information available to you on page 168 in your book. So it is sequential, and it's assigned by the software, and nothing we have to worry about. Next comes this case closed box over here. We won't be using that right now because we're learning how to create cases, but when the case can be closed when all charges have been paid for, all billing is done. You can see this on page 168. Closing a case indicates no more data will be entered into it. When is it appropriate? Policies vary, but generally cases are closed when a patient changes insurance carriers, has recovered completely, or is no longer a patient at the practice. That's a question, by the way, on one of the worksheets in your homework. Next comes description. Why are they here today? This is not a diagnosis. This is you capturing. Patient called in and said, hey, I'd like to see the doctor. I think I have an upper respiratory infection. I have a lot of coughing. I can't breathe. So you can put in cough, difficulty breathing. Or if you remember your terminology, that would be dyspnea. Okay, so that's the description why they're here. Over to the right of that is the cash case. If the patient is paying only by cash and doesn't have insurance, you would put a check mark in there. That would eliminate all these policies. You wouldn't have to put those in. Global coverage, really important here, folks. Do not click. If you click in here or click the drop down, it will automatically put in today's date. Please do not leave a date in there. Delete it, because global coverage until will tell the software that this particular case is covered by insurance, and you won't be able to bill for anything. So throughout this quarter, this class, as we do this, make sure that this does not have a date in it. The guarantor is the patient who is responsible for paying it, or who brings the insurance plan to it. You can go shopping there and see. The marital status or student status is where we can capture this. There's also a box here for print the patient statement, so that it will automatically be printed whenever you have to print out statements for the practice. Okay, it's a default that's on. We'll just leave it as such. So that defines these first ones. The bottom one is it will automatically populate in the employment section if you filled that out when you created the chart. You can capture a little bit more as their retirement date or their status. Okay, so that's the personal tab. That's not too bad. Let's move on to the account tab, and you will find that defined for you in the book on page 172. The easy thing about the account tab is we're only interested in the first two boxes. Who is the assigned provider, and if there was a referring doctor who referred this patient to the practice, who was it? The other boxes are all optional. We don't have a supervising provider, referral source, attorney, or facility, but the software allows us to track that if we need to for that information. We can also get into the billing code for how we set up the billing in the office. Again, we're not going to worry about this time. If insurance companies only say this patient has coverage only for 15 visits or until this date determined by us, then you can capture that here. Again, not doing that. There are times when we have to have an authorization number to be able to treat them, and we can document that here as well as their visit date, and it will track for us how many visits they've been in here for that. You can see the default is usually 100 for insurance companies in a year's time for a particular thing. So here you can see last visit number is 3. So it's a nice little feature that it will track for us. For our purposes, though, it's just the top 2. Moving on to, if you follow in your book, they skip diagnosis. I'm going to jump to policy because I'm trying to follow along in the book, and that you'll find that on page 174. This is where we capture the insurance information. The beauty of this is we don't have to really type anything. We shop and click. Okay, so here is East Ohio PPO. She happens to be the policy holder. So not only is she our patient, she is also the policy holder and guarantor. There will be scenarios where that's not the case, although in our book, it's not going to happen because we have so much to learn in 5 weeks that we're going to stick to the basics right now. They do ask us, what is the relationship of Susan Arlen to the insured who's bringing the policy? It's herself, self to self. We have a place to capture the policy number and group number, as well as the start and end dates of the policy. With the exception of Hiro Tanaka, we will not put in any policy dates. Now let me take a brief moment to talk about group numbers and names. Just as a reminder, if you're not familiar with this, group numbers and or names come from organizations that have purchased insurance plans for their employees. So usually when you see group number or group name, that means it's an employer offered or part of a company, a part of their job. It's a job-related insurance plan. Claim number, if you're following along, I'm on page 175 in your book. Those are claim number if it's a different kind of insurance, if it's property or casualty or auto claims. If you're dealing with some injuries from something like that, you might need to put the claim number in. For us, we're going to leave those bottom ones blank, and like I said, with the exception of Hiro Tanaka, we'll leave the policy dates blank as well. And then we have, real important, this section called assignment of benefits. For doctors who are in an agreement with an insurance plan, we put a check in here, and we always will for ours, to indicate that the doctor will accept payment directly from the insurance plan. The insurance plan doesn't have to pay the patient, and then the patient pays the doctor. Always put that in there. There's a second box below that called capitated plan. This is a plan where you can see the definition of it on page 175, where an insurance plan makes prepayments to the doctor, usually on a monthly basis, if the doctor has patients who have bought from the insurance company. It's kind of a difficult way to explain it. I did check with our local area, and we don't really use capitated plans too much anymore in our area. But I will tell you, Hiro Tanaka's plan is capitated, so when that happens, you'll put a check mark in here as well. Ohio Care HMO in our database is the only plan that is a capitated plan. Let me try one more time. The insurance company will pay a set fee to the doctor for every patient that is seen that is part of their plan, whether or not that patient came in during that month. So the month of August, or let's say the month of July just passed, the doctor has 3 patients that are part of an insurance plan that is capitated. That insurance company automatically pays that doctor a set fee for those 3 patients. If the patient doesn't come in during the month of July, the doctor makes money. If the patient comes in during the month of July and incurs anything above and beyond, then the doctor has to, within reason, absorb that cost. All right, then there are 3 boxes over here that say annual deductible. Some insurance plans say before our insurance starts to pay, the patient has to pay an annual deductible of $1,000. Once that deductible is met, we can put a check mark in this box, and then the insurance company will begin to pick up all the rest of the costs. The lower box for the co-payment, and you'll see these definitions as well if you need them on page 178, is the amount that the patient agrees to pay every time for every visit. And you often see that on your insurance card or on a patient's insurance card, maybe $25 or $30 for an office visit. If they go to an emergency room, it might be as much as $80 to $100, and then the insurance company will kick in. Treatment authorization is a box that we use to capture usually insurance company authorizations for UB04s, which are hospital-related billing. Our courses are for outpatient-related billing or doctor's offices. So this is for UB04 stuff. And then finally, the bottom portion here, and you'll see this defined for you on page 176, deals with how much will the insurance cover for other things like physical therapy, lab, nursing home. All of their 8 boxes here, and your book doesn't define each of these, but those are some of the examples that it would be. Okay, so that takes care of policy one. Policy two is the same with the exception of there's a little bit less, and there is this box called crossover claim, and you'll see that defined on page 177 as whenever we process Medicare and Medicaid, the payer